Well, hi everybody, this is Tim from Bald Head Bread. You're here with me in the Bald Head Bread headquarters slash my kitchen, and hope you guys are all holding up well during this time of pandemic, quarantine craziness. And so one of the things that I've been doing to stay sane during this whole time is, of course, baking a lot of bread. So I wanted to show you guys a technique for one bread that you can make at home, hopefully with ingredients that everyone will already have either in their pantry or that you can easily get from the store. This is not a sourdough, so you don't need any sourdough starter required for this one. And this is a process that's going to take about one whole day. So if you get started on this when you're having your morning coffee first thing in the morning, you should be able to have this bread with dinner by the end of the night. And what we're going to be making is this beautiful country loaf. I couldn't help myself. I've already sliced into it. This is just kind of a basic crusty country loaf, mostly made with white flour, but we've got a little bit of whole wheat in there and actually a little bit of polenta, which really adds to the flavor. And so just to walk you through a couple of the ingredients that you're going to need for this one, first of all, you just need some bread flour. If you can't find bread flour, all-purpose flour is also fine. You can have some different kinds of flour to use in small amounts that kind of help boost the flavor. So this is whole wheat flour. You can use spelt or rye. I like to use a little bit of polenta. You don't have to use any of these, but kind of whatever your taste is, anything you can find from Bob's Red Mill basically is going to work out well for you here. And then you'll need a little bit of sea salt or kosher salt, and then a little bit of yeast. I buy it in this big bag, but if you just have even just one of those little packets, that's going to be fine for you. And then you'll just need some either large bowls, or I have this nice tub, but if you don't have one like this, just a nice big bowl will be okay. And then you're going to need something to cook the bread in. So this is my Dutch oven. If you don't have a Dutch oven like this, a cast iron skillet's also fine. And if you don't have a cast iron skillet, then you can even go with just parchment paper on a baking sheet. Bread is a different journey for everyone, and bread is a kind of process of continual experimentation, and that's one of the things that I really love the most about it. So this recipe that I'm going to walk you through is one that I've sort of been experimenting with. It's not perfect. I think it makes really good bread, but lots of people who may watch this video may have other ways of making bread. Everybody's kind of got their own technique, and so this is definitely not the only way to do this. And I'm really open to people's comments if they watch this video. If there's something I could do better, I would love to learn from you guys as well. So this bread is going to have a few steps. The first step is going to be to make a poulish, a kind of pre-ferment. That's going to really help boost our bread's texture and flavor. That's going to be the step you do first thing in the morning. Later in the afternoon, you're going to make the dough and have a nice bulk rise, and I'll walk you through that. Then you'll proof the bread in a basket or just a bowl lined with a towel, and let that rest for a couple hours, and then we'll bake it. And that's it. And I'll walk you through each of those steps, and then we'll have a bite. So here we go. So to make the poulish, we're just going to have 1 cup of flour. Nice big heaping cup. And we're going to get 1 cup of water. And we're going to add a nice big pinch of yeast. That's like maybe a half teaspoon or something. And then just give that a mix. It's goopy. That's our poulish. Now we wait all day. Okay, so our pre-ferment is almost done. So while it just finishes getting ready, we're going to start to work on the dough. And the first thing we're going to do for making that is adding in the flour. So I'm going to use 2 or 3 different kinds of flour for this recipe. The base of it is bread flour, so I'm using King Arthur bread flour, the same that I used for the poulish. And we're going to start with just getting 400 grams of bread flour. And I know that not everybody has a scale, but you can Google how many cups, kind of converting cups to grams. I just find this way easier. It's just more precise. All right, so that's 400 grams of bread flour. We'll put that into our big bread bucket. And then you have some option here in this recipe. You have another 100 grams, because we're going to have about 100 grams of flour total. But you've got this extra 100 grams that you can kind of take, choose your own adventure. You can add another 100 grams of just white bread flour and have a loaf that's kind of nice and white. But if you want to mix it up a little bit, you can add some different stuff. I've got this. This is a really nice whole wheat flour, and so I'm going to put in some of this, and I'm going to put in some polenta, and just make sure that together these two things add up to about 100 grams. So that's going to be about 20% of the flour volume that we're using. So I'm putting in a bit of this whole wheat, and I'm putting in the rest with polenta. This is just corn grits, polenta, really tasty in bread. The base of the bread is still the bread flour, but we're just adding enough here to kind of give a little bit of extra flavor. So you've got that polenta and whole wheat flour, so we're going to put that in there. Now we are going to add the water. And we're going to make this loaf about 40% hydration. So that means we're going to use about, again, 400 grams of water. Again, you can see what Google says about measuring this out without a scale. All right, that's enough. So we'll add that water in with our flour here. And then I'm just going to give this a quick mix with my hands, which are clean, by the way. Just kind of mix that up. Make sure the flour is all kind of contacted with the water, and you've got this nice kind of early stage dough here is what that's going to look like. It's kind of shaggy. So now we're going to leave this and let it sit for half an hour for another kind of pre-fermentation stage called the autolyse. So we'll be back in 30 minutes. Our dough here is nicely autolyse. Can you see it? Yeah, it's looking good. So it still needs a lot of work to do, though, before we can kind of leave it for its bulk rise. We're still missing a few ingredients. So the first thing we need to add in is some salt. I'm going to put in about a tablespoon and a half of sea salt. Any salt is okay. Kosher salt, sea salt. That looks like a good amount. And then, I'm missing our yeast. Put another pinch of yeast in. And so added another big pinch of yeast. That's looking pretty good so far. Okay, so now we're going to use our pouliche that we made earlier this morning. And if you want to take a look at that, you can see that it is nice and jiggly in there. It's kind of liquidy. It's got a nice kind of bubble structure. You can get that sort of smell of kind of alcohol and fermentation coming off of it. And we are going to use about 50% of the flour weight with pouliche. So that's about 250 grams. So let's weigh that out. This is really going to help with the flavor and structure of our dough. Let's get a little bit more of this happening. All right, I think that looks, yeah, it's kind of gross. It's like snot. All right, let's get that in there. So now we are going to mix this dough up, by hand, and you know, and do a little bit of a kneading in the bucket here. And usually I like to set a timer for about 5 minutes for this process. So I'm gonna just kind of get my hand in here, and yeah, it's a bit gross at first, but just sort of lean into the sticky, weird sloppiness of it, and just kind of get a nice mix. It is going to be wet. This is a fairly wet dough recipe. That's why it's nice to be able to do all of this, you know, in a big, whatever your biggest bowl or kind of tub or bucket is, because you don't want this nasty stuff on your, you know, you don't want to have to knead this just on your kitchen counter. So, you know, what I like to think about in this process is, you know, you're sort of imagining the dough hook setting on a KitchenAid. You can kind of make your hand into a bit of a hook and kind of doing this sort of circular motion of sort of squeezing and pulling and twisting. And kind of folding, so sort of picking the dough up and folding it back in on itself, picking it up and folding it in. Can you see that? Picking it up, sort of folding it in, and doing this kind of motion. So I'm going to do this for about 5 minutes. Whew. Okay, it's been 5 minutes. So now our dough is ready to bulk rise. Look at that. That looks nice. It's kind of a nice dough. Looks really good. And now we're just going to let that sit. Okay, so it's been about 2.5 hours, and I've folded the dough 2 different times in that period, and I think now it's looking like it's about ready to go. It's got some, it's a little hard, I guess it's a little bright. There's some nice bubbles in there. And it's increased in volume by about 2-fold. It's gotten about twice as big. And well, it's got a really nice kind of sweet smell to it. So now I think it's about ready to, you know, we don't want to let this sit for too long and kind of over bulk. So I'm going to take it out now, and we're going to move it from this bucket into our proofing basket. And by the way, this proofing basket, so this is a special one for bread, but if you don't have one, you can basically use any bowl that's, you know, kind of around this same size that you put a tea towel in. And then I've got some flour here. This is all-purpose flour mixed with some rice flour, which I think is a little bit more of a coarse grain and kind of keeps the bread from sticking a little bit better. So that's what I like to use. But you know, any all-purpose flour is gonna be okay. So we're gonna get ready to take the dough out. I'm gonna put a little bit of flour down on my counter surface and some on my hands, and then we'll bring the dough out here from our bucket. Again, this is a pretty wet dough, so it's gonna spread a little bit, but get it kind of on top of that pile of flour. And then what we're gonna do is kind of shape this dough into the nice round shape that's going to go into our proofing basket here. Okay, I'll put some flour in the proofing basket also. And the way we're going to do that is by kind of taking the edges of this bread and sort of folding them in on each other like this, sort of making a little package. And you know, you can see as you do this, you can see some of the bubbles coming up, and hopefully if you've got a nice coating of this flour on the outside, it shouldn't stick too much to your countertop. And you know, basically we're just going to shape it up like this, give it a few turns, and then when it feels like it's kind of come together into a nice shape, I'm just going to pick this up and place it right into the proofing basket like that. It's looking really nice. You can kind of see those whole grains in there that we added earlier. So I'm going to cover this up. Okay, so the bread has had a very nice nap in the fridge, and now we're going to wake it up from its nap and throw it in the oven to bake. Ooh, look at that. So it's nicely proved. Got a little bit of jiggle, but not too much. So what we're going to do is use our dusting flour again. I like to put a little bit just right on the top here. This is actually the bottom of the bread that's sticking up, but just to kind of give it a little bit of a base. And we'll dust our countertop again. Get some for the hands. And what we're going to do is tip this out and then kind of give it a final shape up. We'll slash it with our bread knife. This is like a razor blade, but you can kind of use any sharp knife that you have or a razor. And then we'll throw it in the oven. It'll be ready to go. So for this, just kind of do a single motion. We'll just kind of tip it out there. Yeah, and it's kind of still flowing. So we'll give it a nice little shape up. Kind of recover some of that round shape. That looks nice. Kind of tuck in the bottom here. And then what I like to do is just another little bit of dusting on the top, because this will just kind of help it from scorching and give it a nice kind of white appearance. Get it all nicely tucked in. And then, you know, for your slashing, you can kind of do any pattern that you want. I like to just do a kind of simple cross. I feel like that's the easiest thing. So I'll just give it a nice deep cross right across the top. This way it'll sort of rise up nicely. All right, now we're going to get our Dutch oven out and throw it in the oven. Do a little camera switch. And I've had the Dutch oven in the oven already, heating up, so it's nice and hot. And we'll take the lid off. And then, yeah, you know, you can also do this step on top of a piece of parchment paper. That sometimes makes it a little bit easier to move into the oven, but I'm just going to manhandle it. That's what I like to do. So you just pick it up, just plop it right in there. Can we get a close-up of this? You can bring it a little closer. You can see it in the pan. So there it is. So I'm going to put the lid back on here and then throw it in. Oh, there goes our timer. So now the bread is ready to come out, and I think it's smelling pretty darn good. Oh yeah, mama. Woo! Oh yeah, look at that beauty. That is something nice. Now we can take it right out. Oh, it's got a crunch. It's got a crackle. And you can just give it a quick test on the bottom to see, does it sound kind of hollow? I think it does. How's that? What a beauty. So there it is, guys. I hope that made sense. Hope your loaf is coming out looking really nice. I know mine is. I'm actually going to take a crack into this thing. Oh, it smells good. It's got a really nice kind of crumb structure in there. It's a little tight. Probably could open up a little more. Like I said, it's always an experimentation. But it's got a really nice soft texture. It's baked all the way through. I think Paul Hollywood would hopefully approve. And I'm going to take a slice right now because I got to taste it. Just put a little bit of butter on there. Mmm. Mmm. So good. Unbelievable. Wow. Nothing beats it. So, guys, I hope that was enjoyable. Make sure to follow me on Bald Head Bread. DM me on Instagram if you have any questions about anything. And stay safe out there.